The train's whistle screamed its departure just as Delilah Crawford stepped onto the dusty platform of Beaver, Utah, clutching her worn carpetbag and a letter that had promised her a new life as a bride to a man she had never met. She watched the locomotive churn away into the scorching August afternoon of 1882, leaving a trail of black smoke against the brilliant blue sky, and felt her heart sink when she realized that no one was there to greet her among the handful of people lingering near the small station house. Delilah stood there in her best traveling dress, a modest gray affair with pearl buttons that she had spent weeks mending and pressing for this very moment, her auburn hair pinned carefully beneath a simple bonnet. She was 22 years old and had left behind a life of drudgery in a New York textile factory, responding to an advertisement from a prosperous rancher named Howard Billings, who sought a wife to help manage his household. They had exchanged 3 letters over the course of 4 months, and though his words had been formal and somewhat stilted, she had convinced herself that a practical arrangement in the wide, open territories of Utah would be preferable to the grim poverty and endless toil that awaited her back east. But now, standing alone on the platform as the other passengers dispersed into the small town beyond, Delilah felt the first prickle of doubt. She had arrived exactly when she had written she would. The letter confirming the date was folded carefully in her reticule. Perhaps Mr. Billings had been delayed. Perhaps there had been some emergency on his ranch. She tried to reassure herself with these possibilities as she moved her bag to a bench near the station wall and sat down to wait. The sun beat down mercilessly, and the platform offered no shade. Delilah could feel perspiration beginning to dampen the back of her dress. She had read that Utah was hot in the summer, but the reality was far more intense than she had imagined. The air itself seemed to shimmer with heat, and the distant mountains looked hazy and unreal. An hour passed. Then another. The station master, a portly man with gray mutton chops, emerged from his office and gave her a curious look before disappearing again. A wagon rattled past on the dirt road beyond the platform. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked. Delilah felt increasingly conspicuous sitting there alone, and a cold knot of fear began to form in her stomach despite the oppressive heat. What if Mr. Billings had changed his mind? What if he had taken one look at her from some hidden vantage point and decided she was not what he wanted? She knew she was no great beauty. Her features were pleasant enough, but her nose was perhaps a bit too strong, her frame too thin from years of poor nutrition. Perhaps he had expected someone softer, prettier, more refined. She was considering whether she should inquire at the station office when she heard the sound of boots on the wooden platform. Delilah looked up to see a man approaching, tall and lean with broad shoulders that filled out his worn denim shirt. He wore dusty leather chaps over dark trousers, and a wide-brimmed hat shaded his face from the sun. As he drew closer, she could make out strong features weathered by sun and wind, a square jaw with a few days' growth of beard, and eyes that were a remarkable shade of gray-green, like sage after rain. The man stopped a respectful distance away and tipped his hat, revealing dark brown hair that curled slightly at the ends. "Madam," he said, his voice deep and warm with a slight drawl, "I could not help but notice you have been sitting here for some time. Are you waiting for someone?" Delilah felt her cheeks flush with embarrassment. "I am," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "I was supposed to be met by Mr. Howard Billings. I am to be his wife. That is, we have an arrangement, but he has not come." The man's expression shifted, something flickering in his eyes that might have been sympathy or perhaps recognition. He glanced down at his boots for a moment, then back at her. "How long have you been waiting?" "The train arrived at 1:30, Delilah said. "Nearly 3 hours now." He seemed to consider this, then made a decision. He moved to the bench and sat down, maintaining a proper distance between them, and set his hat on his knee. "Well then," he said quietly, "I will wait with you." Delilah stared at him in surprise. "You do not have to do that. I am sure you have business to attend to. I would not want to impose." "No imposition," he replied. "Nobody should have to wait alone like this. Besides, my business can wait. I was just picking up supplies, and they will not spoil in this heat any more than they already have." He offered her a slight smile that softened his rugged features. "Name is Nathan Keller. I have a ranch about 12 miles north of here." "Delilah Crawford," she said, extending her hand hesitantly. His hand was calloused and warm when he shook hers, his grip firm but gentle. "Pleased to make your acquaintance, Miss Crawford," Nathan said. "Though I am sorry it is under these circumstances. You came all the way from back east, New York," Delilah confirmed. "I worked in a textile factory there. The hours were long and the pay was poor. When I saw Mr. Billings' advertisement in the newspaper, it seemed like an opportunity for something better." She paused, suddenly feeling foolish for sharing so much with a stranger. "I suppose that sounds naive." "Not at all," Nathan said. "Takes courage to travel so far to start over. That is something to be respected." He leaned back against the wall, his long legs stretched out before him. "You have been corresponding with Billings for a while then?" "4 months," Delilah said. "He wrote that he had a successful cattle ranch and a comfortable home. He said he needed a wife to help manage the household and eventually start a family. It all seemed very straightforward and honest." Nathan was quiet for a moment, and Delilah noticed a muscle working in his jaw. "Do you know much about Billings?" he asked carefully. "Only what he told me in his letters," she admitted. "Why do you ask? Do you know him?" "I know of him," Nathan said. "Most folks around Beaver know of Howard Billings. He has one of the larger ranches in the area." He seemed to choose his words carefully. "He is a hard man, demanding. Some say he has trouble keeping ranch hands because he drives them too hard." Delilah felt her stomach tighten. "Are you saying I should not marry him?" "I am saying you should make sure you know what you are getting into," Nathan replied. "But that is your decision to make, not mine. I am just being honest with you." They fell into silence again. The sun had moved lower in the sky, casting longer shadows across the platform. Delilah watched a tumbleweed roll lazily down the main street of Beaver. The town was small, just a handful of wooden buildings clustered along the dusty road. She could see a general store, a saloon, what looked like a church with a modest steeple, and a few other structures she could not identify from this distance. "What is your ranch like?" she asked Nathan, partly out of genuine curiosity and partly to fill the uncomfortable silence. His face brightened slightly. "It is not as big as some of the spreads around here," he said, "but it is mine. About 300 head of cattle, some good grazing land, a creek that runs year-round. I built the house myself 5 years ago when I first claimed the land. It is not fancy, but it is solid. Got a barn, a chicken coop, a vegetable garden that my hired hand's wife tends." He paused, and she saw something wistful in his expression. "It is a good place, peaceful. I always thought it would be a good place to raise a family someday." "You are not married?" Delilah asked, then immediately regretted the personal question. "Forgive me, that was forward." "No offense taken," Nathan said with a slight smile. "No, I am not married. Been too busy building up the ranch these past years to do much courting. And truth be told, there are not a lot of eligible women out here. Most are already spoken for." He glanced at her, then away quickly. "That is why men like Billings send for mail-order brides, I suppose. Though I could never bring myself to do it that way. Seems like a woman should have a real choice about who she marries, not just pick from a letter." Delilah felt a flush of shame. "You think I have made a mistake?" "I did not say that," Nathan said quickly. "Your circumstances were different. You were looking for a way out of a hard situation. There is no shame in that, and who knows, maybe you and Billings will suit each other just fine." But his tone suggested he did not quite believe his own words. Another hour passed. Nathan proved to be surprisingly easy to talk to, and Delilah found herself sharing more about her life than she had intended. She told him about growing up in an orphanage after her parents died of cholera when she was 7, about the years of hard work in the factory, about her small rented room in a boarding house where the walls were thin and the landlady was mean. He listened attentively, asking thoughtful questions, and in turn shared stories about his own life growing up in Missouri, learning ranching from his father, and eventually deciding to strike out on his own and claim land in Utah territory. "My father thought I was crazy," Nathan said with a rueful laugh. "Said Utah was too harsh, too remote, but I wanted to build something of my own, not just work someone else's land all my life." He looked out at the mountains in the distance. "It has been harder than I expected, but I do not regret it. This land gets in your blood." The sun was beginning to sink toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold, when the station master emerged again. He looked at Delilah with something like pity and cleared his throat. "Begging your pardon, miss, but I will be closing up soon. The evening train is not due for another 3 hours, and I have to go home for supper." Delilah felt panic rising in her chest. "But what if Mr. Billings comes?" The station master shifted uncomfortably. "Well, miss, if you do not mind my saying, it has been over 5 hours now. If he was coming, he would have been here by now." He hesitated. "There is a boarding house just down the street, run by Mrs. Hennessy. She is respectable and her rates are fair. You might want to get yourself a room for the night and sort this out in the morning." Delilah opened her reticule with trembling hands and looked at the meager contents. She had enough money for perhaps 3 or 4 nights of lodging if she was careful, but that was all. If Mr. Billings did not come, she would have no way to earn a living in this small town and no money to return east. She felt tears prickling at her eyes and blinked them back furiously. She would not cry, not in front of these men. Nathan stood up abruptly. "Miss Crawford, if I may make a suggestion." She looked up at him, trying to keep her composure. "Please. My foreman's wife, Ruby, is a good woman with a kind heart. We have a small spare room in the house where ranch hands sometimes stay when the weather is bad. You could come out to my place for the night, get a good meal and a safe place to sleep. In the morning, I will bring you back into town and we can inquire about Billings. Maybe there is a simple explanation. Maybe his letter got delayed or he is sick. But at least you will not have to spend your money on lodging until we know for certain what the situation is." Delilah hesitated. Every rule of propriety she had ever learned told her it was inappropriate for an unmarried woman to go to an unmarried man's home. But what choice did she have? She could sense Nathan Keller was a decent man, and his offer seemed genuinely kind, not predatory. Besides, he had mentioned his foreman's wife would be there as a chaperone of sorts. "That is very generous of you, Mr. Keller," she said quietly. "I accept with gratitude." "Nathan, please," he said, picking up his hat and settling it on his head. "Let me get my wagon. I left it at the general store. I will just be a few minutes." He strode off down the platform with long, easy strides, and Delilah watched him go. She noticed the way he moved with confidence and purpose, comfortable in his own skin in a way that the factory workers and shopkeepers back east had never been. There was something solid and reassuring about Nathan Keller, something that made her feel just a little bit safer in this strange new world where she had been so quickly abandoned. True to his word, Nathan returned shortly with a sturdy wagon pulled by 2 well-groomed horses. He loaded her carpet bag in the back next to crates of supplies, then helped her up onto the bench seat with a steadying hand at her elbow. The touch was brief and respectful, but Delilah felt an unexpected warmth from it that she quickly pushed aside. She was supposed to be another man's bride, after all, even if that man had not bothered to meet her. They rode out of Beaver as the sun continued its descent, turning the landscape into a study in gold and shadow. The terrain was unlike anything Delilah had ever seen, vast and open with scattered sagebrush and juniper trees dotting the rolling hills. Mountains rose in the distance on all sides, their peaks still touched with snow despite the summer heat. The air smelled of dust and something she could not quite identify, something wild and clean that was nothing like the coal smoke and factory stench of New York. "It is beautiful," she said softly, almost to herself. Nathan glanced at her with a pleased expression. "It grows on you." Most people from back east think it is just empty wasteland at first, but once you learn to see it proper, you realize it has its own kind of beauty. "See that rise over there?" He pointed to a low hill covered in sage. "Come spring, that whole hillside turns purple with wildflowers. And in the winter, when the snow covers everything, it is like being in a different world entirely." "Do you ever get lonely out here?" Delilah asked. "It seems so isolated." "Sometimes," Nathan admitted, "but I've got Hank and Ruby, my foreman, and his wife. They live in a small cabin on the property, and I keep busy enough that I do not have much time to dwell on it. Besides, I prefer the company of a few good people to the crowds of a city. Quality over quantity, I suppose." They talked easily as the wagon rolled along the rutted road, and Delilah found herself relaxing despite the strangeness of her situation. Nathan pointed out landmarks and shared stories about the land, about learning which plants the cattle preferred and where the best water sources were located. He spoke about his livestock with genuine affection, describing the personalities of some of his favorite cows and the ornery bull that had once chased him up a tree. "Spent 3 hours up in that cottonwood," he said with a laugh. "Hank finally came looking for me and managed to lure the beast away with some feed. I have never lived it down. Ruby still teases me about it whenever I complain about anything being difficult." Delilah found herself laughing, the sound surprising her. It felt good to laugh after the tension and disappointment of the day. "I cannot imagine you being afraid of anything," she said. "Well, you would be wrong," Nathan replied with a grin. "I am definitely afraid of temperamental bulls and rattlesnakes. And Ruby when she is angry about someone tracking mud through her clean kitchen." The ranch appeared as they crested a rise, and Delilah caught her breath. It was nestled in a valley with the creek Nathan had mentioned running through it, lined with cottonwood trees that provided a welcome strip of green against the golden landscape. The house was a solid structure of timber and stone, single-story, but well-built with a wide porch across the front. A barn stood nearby, painted red with white trim, and she could see several other outbuildings, including what must be the cabin where the foreman lived. Cattle grazed in the distance, and a few horses stood in a corral near the barn. "It is lovely," Delilah said sincerely. "You have built something to be proud of." Nathan looked pleased by her words. "Thank you. It has been a lot of work, but it is worth it." He drove the wagon up to the house and set the brake. "Let me go in and make sure Ruby knows we have a guest. She does not like surprises." He jumped down from the wagon and headed into the house, leaving Delilah to wait. She looked around at the property, taking in the details. Everything was well maintained and orderly, from the neat fence lines to the organized yard. This was the home of a man who took pride in his work and cared about the life he had built. Nathan emerged a moment later with a woman who Delilah guessed was in her late 30s. She had a round, pleasant face and warm brown eyes, her dark hair pulled back in a practical bun. She was wiping her hands on her apron as she approached the wagon. "Poor dear," Ruby said as Nathan helped Delilah down. "What a terrible thing to come all this way and not be met. You must be exhausted and hungry. Come inside right now and we will get you sorted out." Ruby's kindness was almost Delilah's undoing. She felt tears threatening again but managed to hold them back as she followed the older woman into the house. The interior was simple but comfortable, with handmade furniture and colorful rag rugs on the polished wood floors. A fire burned in the stone hearth despite the warm evening, and something delicious was simmering in a pot hanging over it. "I was just finishing up dinner," Ruby said. "We eat simple out here, but there is plenty." "Nathan, you go help Hank with the evening chores and give this young lady some time to freshen up. Delilah, is it? What a pretty name. Come with me, dear." She led Delilah down a short hallway to a small bedroom. It contained a narrow bed with a colorful quilt, a washstand with a pitcher and basin, and a single chair. A window looked out over the valley, and the last rays of sunlight were streaming through it. "The room is not much, but the bed is comfortable and the linens are clean," Ruby said. "There is water in the pitcher if you want to wash up. Take your time. Dinner will not be ready for another half-hour or so." "Thank you," Delilah said. "You have all been so kind. I do not know what I would have done if Mr. Keller had not offered to help." Ruby gave her a knowing look. "Nathan is one of the good ones," she said quietly. "Heart as big as this territory and twice as generous. Do not you worry about anything tonight. You are safe here, and tomorrow we will figure out what to do about this Billings business." She patted Delilah's shoulder and left, closing the door softly behind her. Alone for the first time since morning, Delilah sank onto the bed and allowed herself a few quiet tears. She was terrified and confused and had no idea what she was going to do, but she was also strangely grateful. Nathan Keller had shown her more kindness in one afternoon than anyone had in years, expecting nothing in return. It gave her a small spark of hope that perhaps the world was not as cold and indifferent as she had come to believe. She washed her face and hands, changed into a fresh shirtwaist, and tidied her hair as best she could. When she emerged from the room, she found the main living area had been set with a table that held 4 places. Nathan was there, his hat hung on a peg by the door, talking quietly with a lanky man she assumed was Hank. Both men stood when she entered. "Miss Crawford, this is Hank Morgan, my foreman," Nathan said. "Hank, Miss Delilah Crawford." Hank was tall and weathered with a grizzled beard and kind eyes. He nodded respectfully. "Pleasure, madam. Sorry to hear about your troubles today." "Thank you, Mr. Morgan," Delilah said. "Just Hank will do fine," he replied with a slight smile. Ruby bustled in from what must have been the kitchen with a steaming pot of stew and a basket of fresh bread. "Sit down, all of you, before this gets cold. Delilah, you sit here by me." The meal was simple but delicious. Hearty beef stew with vegetables and thick slices of bread with butter. Delilah realized she had not eaten since morning and was ravenously hungry. The conversation flowed easily, with Ruby asking Delilah questions about her journey and life back east while the men discussed ranch business. It felt surprisingly comfortable and domestic, like being part of a family, and Delilah felt some of the tension drain from her shoulders. After dinner, they moved to chairs near the hearth, and Nathan brought out a pot of coffee. The fire had burned down to coals, casting a warm glow through the room. Outside, the last light was fading from the sky, and Delilah could hear the chirping of crickets through the open windows. "So what do you think happened with Billings?" Hank asked, directing the question to no one in particular. Seems mighty strange for a man to go to the trouble of sending for a bride and then not show up to meet her. Could be any number of things, Nathan said, though his tone was careful. Maybe his horse threw a shoe, or there was trouble with his cattle. Could be he is sick. Or could be he changed his mind, Ruby said bluntly. Would not be the first time a man got cold feet about taking a wife. Ruby, Hank said with a warning tone. Well, it is true, Ruby insisted. No point dancing around it. The question is what Miss Crawford is going to do now. All eyes turned to Delilah, and she felt her face grow warm. I suppose I should wait a few days and see if Mr. Billings comes to explain himself. If he does not, I will have to figure out how to earn enough money for passage back east. You want to go back? Nathan asked, and there was something in his voice she could not quite identify. I do not know what else to do, Delilah admitted. I have no family, no prospects here. I came to be married, and if that is not going to happen, then I have no reason to stay. You could find work here, Ruby suggested. There are always people needing help. Mrs. Hennessy at the boarding house is getting on in years. She might appreciate an extra pair of hands. Or you could stay here, Nathan said suddenly, then seemed surprised by his own words. He cleared his throat. I mean, we could use some help around the ranch. Ruby has been after me to hire someone to help with the housework and the garden and such. There is more work than she can manage on her own, especially during calving season and roundup when we have extra hands that need feeding. It would not be charity. It would be proper employment with room and board plus wages. Delilah stared at him, unsure how to respond. Ruby and Hank exchanged a meaningful glance that she did not miss. That is a very generous offer, Mr. Keller, Delilah said slowly, but I am not sure it would be proper. I am a single woman and you are a single man. Ruby and Hank are here, Nathan pointed out. And you would have your own room. Everything would be completely respectable. I am just saying you have options beyond going back to New York or waiting around for a man who might not come. Think about it, dear, Ruby said gently. You do not have to decide tonight. Take a few days, see how you feel. If Billings shows up with a good explanation, you can still decide to marry him if that is what you want. But if he does not, well, you have got another path available to you. Delilah nodded, feeling overwhelmed. I appreciate it. I truly do. Let me sleep on it. The conversation turned to lighter topics after that, and soon Ruby was showing Delilah back to the small bedroom and making sure she had everything she needed. Alone again, Delilah changed into her nightgown and lay on the bed, staring at the ceiling. The events of the day played through her mind like a strange dream. This morning she had been on a train heading toward a predetermined future. Now she was lying in the house of a man she had just met, her plans in ruins, but somehow not feeling as despairing as she probably should. She thought about Nathan Keller, about his kindness and his easy smile, about the way his eyes crinkled at the corners when he laughed. She thought about the ranch and how peaceful it seemed, how different from the cramped, noisy misery of the city. She thought about Howard Billings, a man she had never met, and tried to summon some feeling of loss or disappointment about his failure to appear. But all she could feel was a strange sense of relief. Sleep came eventually, and Delilah dreamed of wide open spaces and a man with gray-green eyes who tipped his hat and waited with her. The next morning, Delilah woke to the sound of roosters crowing and sunlight streaming through the window. For a moment she was disoriented, unsure where she was. Then the memories of the previous day came flooding back. She dressed quickly in her second-best dress and made her way to the main room, where she found Ruby already at work preparing breakfast. "Good morning, dear," Ruby said cheerfully. "Did you sleep well?" "Very well, thank you," Delilah replied. "Can I help with anything?" "You are a guest," Ruby protested, but Delilah shook her head. "I am not accustomed to sitting idle," she said. Please let me help. Ruby smiled and handed her a bowl of eggs. All right then. You can scramble these while I finish the biscuits. They worked together in comfortable silence, and Delilah found herself enjoying the simple domestic tasks. The kitchen was bright and well organized, with copper pots hanging from hooks and shelves lined with preserves and supplies. Through the window, she could see Nathan and Hank working near the barn, their voices carrying faintly on the morning air. Breakfast was another communal affair, with everyone gathering around the table. Nathan looked freshly washed, his hair still damp, and he gave Delilah a warm smile as he took his seat. "Morning, Miss Crawford. I trust you slept well." "Very well, thank you," she said. "And please call me Delilah. After your kindness yesterday, I think we can dispense with such formality." "Delilah it is," he agreed. "And you have been calling me Nathan in your head anyway, I can tell." She felt herself blush, and he grinned. Ruby set a platter of eggs and biscuits on the table, along with bacon and gravy, and they all dug in. The men ate with the hearty appetites of people who worked hard physically, and the conversation was light and easy. "I thought I would take you back into Beaver this morning," Nathan said between bites. "We can ask around about Billings, see if anyone knows where he might be. And you can send a telegram if you want. Let him know you arrived and are wondering what happened." "That sounds like a good plan," Delilah agreed. "I do not want to impose on your hospitality any longer than necessary." "It is no imposition," Nathan said firmly, "but I understand you want answers. We will head out after breakfast." An hour later, Delilah found herself back on the wagon bench beside Nathan, retracing the route they had taken the previous evening. In the morning light, the landscape looked even more dramatic, the mountains sharply defined against the brilliant blue sky. The air was already growing warm, promising another hot day. "Can I ask you something personal?" Nathan said after they had ridden in silence for a while. "Of course," Delilah replied. "Do you actually want to marry Billings? I mean, did you have any feelings for him based on his letters, or was it purely a practical arrangement?" Delilah considered the question carefully. "I think it was mostly practical," she admitted. "His letters were polite but not particularly warm. I told myself that affection might grow over time, that many marriages start as partnerships and become more. But no, I cannot say I had strong feelings for him beyond hope for a better life." Nathan nodded slowly. "That is honest, at least. I guess I just wondered because you seem surprisingly calm about being stood up. If I had traveled across the country to meet someone who had promised to marry me, I would be pretty upset." "Oh, I am upset," Delilah said. "Or at least I was yesterday. But I think I am more embarrassed and worried about my situation than heartbroken." "Does that make me cold?" "Not at all," Nathan said. "It makes you sensible. You saw an opportunity and took it. The fact that it did not work out is not your fault." They arrived in Beaver around mid-morning, and Nathan drove the wagon straight to the general store. The proprietor, a balding man with spectacles named Mr. Jameson, greeted them warmly. "Nathan, good to see you again so soon. Forget something yesterday?" "Not exactly," Nathan said. "This is Miss Delilah Crawford. She arrived on yesterday's train from New York, supposed to meet Howard Billings. He never showed up. Have you seen him recently or heard anything about why he might not have come?" Mr. Jameson's expression grew uncomfortable. He glanced at Delilah with something like pity. "Billings was in here about a week ago," he said slowly. "Bought a bottle of whiskey and some supplies. Seemed in a foul mood, but that is nothing unusual for him." "Did he mention anything about expecting a visitor, about getting married?" Nathan pressed. Mr. Jameson shifted his weight. "Look, I do not like to spread gossip, but seeing as the young lady is involved, I suppose she should know. There has been talk around town that Billings has been courting Sally Porter, the widow who moved here last spring. Some folks say he has been spending a lot of time at her place. Delilah felt as if she had been struck. But he sent for me. He proposed marriage in his letters. I know, and I am sorry, Mr. Jameson said, but I think maybe he changed his mind and did not have the decency to tell you. Or maybe he was keeping his options open, seeing which situation worked out better for him. Either way, it is a shameful thing to do to a lady. Nathan's jaw had tightened, and Delilah could see anger in his eyes. Where does this Sally Porter live? He asked. Nathan, no, Delilah said quickly. I do not want any trouble. I am not going to cause trouble, Nathan said. But I think you deserve an explanation, and if Billings is too cowardly to give you one, maybe this widow can at least confirm what actually happened. Mr. Jameson gave them directions to Sally Porter's property, a small homestead on the eastern edge of town. Nathan thanked him and helped Delilah back onto the wagon, his movements tight with controlled anger. You do not have to do this, Delilah said as they drove toward the address. I think I have my answer. He changed his mind and was too much of a coward to tell me. That is all I need to know. You deserve better than that, Nathan said quietly. You deserve honesty and respect, and by God, I am going to make sure you get at least that much. They found Sally Porter's homestead easily enough, a small but neat property with a vegetable garden and a few chickens scratching in the yard. A woman in her 30s with blonde hair and a suspicious expression emerged as they pulled up. Can I help you? She asked, her eyes moving between Nathan and Delilah. Nathan tipped his hat. Mrs. Porter, my name is Nathan Keller. This is Miss Delilah Crawford. She traveled from New York to marry Howard Billings, but he never met her at the station. We have heard he has been spending time with you, and we were hoping you might know where he is or why he did not show up. Sally Porter's face flushed red. I do not know anything about any mail-order bride, she said defensively. Howard never mentioned it, so you are involved with him. Delilah asked directly. Sally hesitated, then seemed to deflate. We have been courting, yes. He proposed to me 2 weeks ago. I accepted. We are planning to be married next month. She looked at Delilah with something like guilt. I swear I did not know about you. If I had, I would have told him he had to make things right. Did he seem like the kind of man who would send for a bride and then abandon her at a train station? Nathan asked, his voice hard. Sally looked down at her hands. Howard can be difficult. He has a temper, and he does not always think about how his actions affect other people. But I care for him, and he says he cares for me. I am sorry for your situation, Miss Crawford, but I cannot help what I do not know about. Delilah felt numb. So it was true. Billings had simply decided he had a better option locally and had not bothered to inform her. She had been discarded without a second thought, her feelings and her circumstances completely disregarded. Thank you for your honesty, Mrs. Porter, Delilah said with as much dignity as she could muster. I hope you will be happy together, though I would caution you about trusting a man who treats people so carelessly. She turned and walked back to the wagon, her back straight, determined not to show how humiliated she felt. Nathan followed, and they rode in silence back toward the main street of town. I am so sorry, Nathan said finally. You deserved so much better than this. It does not matter, Delilah said, though her voice was tight. What matters now is what I do next. Nathan pulled the wagon to a stop in front of the telegraph office. Do you want to send a wire to anyone? Let them know you arrived safely. There is no one to wire, Delilah said. I have no family, and my friends back east would not be able to help even if they wanted to. Nathan was quiet for a moment, then said, So what do you want to do? Do you want to go back to New York? Delilah thought about the factory, the tiny boarding house room, the endless gray days of toil and poverty. She thought about Nathan's ranch, the golden landscape, the kindness she had been shown. She thought about how, despite the humiliation and disappointment of the past day, she had felt more alive and more hopeful than she had in years. "I want to take you up on your offer," she said, turning to look at him. "If it still stands, I want to work on your ranch. I want to stay in Utah." Nathan's face broke into a smile that transformed his features, making him look younger and almost boyish. "It still stands," he said. "And I promise you will be treated with respect and paid fairly. You will never regret this decision if I have anything to say about it." "I believe you," Delilah said, and realized she meant it. They spent the rest of the morning buying a few supplies Delilah would need, including fabric for some new dresses more suitable for ranch work and some practical boots. Nathan insisted on paying for everything, saying it was an advance on her wages, and though Delilah protested, she eventually accepted gratefully. Her meager savings would not have stretched far enough. By the time they headed back to the ranch, it was early afternoon and the heat was intense. But Delilah felt lighter than she had in years. Yes, she had been abandoned and humiliated. Yes, her original plans had fallen apart. But somehow, through a stranger's kindness, she had found an unexpected opportunity. She had no idea where this new path would lead, but for the first time in her life, she was choosing her own direction rather than simply accepting whatever circumstances dealt her. Back at the ranch, Ruby welcomed them with obvious relief. "Thank goodness," she said. "I was worried you might have found out something terrible." "So what happened?" Over lunch, they explained the situation with Howard Billings and Sally Porter. Ruby listened with increasing indignation, muttering about the poor character of men who treated women like interchangeable property. When Nathan mentioned that Delilah had agreed to stay and work on the ranch, Ruby clapped her hands together with delight. "Oh, that is wonderful news. I am so happy you will be staying, dear. We will have such a good time together. And Lord knows I can use the help. These men eat like horses and make twice the mess." "Hey now," Hank protested with a grin. "We are not that bad." "You most certainly are," Ruby said firmly, "but we love you anyway." The easy affection between all of them made Delilah smile. This felt like a real home, not just a house. She had never experienced anything quite like it growing up in the orphanage or living in the boarding house. It gave her a warm feeling in her chest that she was not quite sure how to name. That afternoon, Ruby showed Delilah around the property properly, explaining the various chores and routines. There was the vegetable garden to tend, chickens to feed and eggs to collect, meals to prepare for the household and any hired hands during busy seasons, laundry to wash, and endless cleaning to do. It was hard work, but no harder than the factory had been and infinitely more pleasant. The air was fresh, the surroundings beautiful, and her companions kind. Over the following days, Delilah settled into a routine. She woke early each morning to help Ruby with breakfast, spent her days working in the garden or the house, and her evenings around the hearth with the others, talking and sometimes playing cards. Nathan proved to be excellent company, with a dry sense of humor and endless stories about ranch life. She learned about the various challenges of raising cattle in this harsh climate, about market prices and breeding lines, and the ever-present threat of drought or severe weather. What surprised her most was how much she enjoyed the physical work. Her body grew stronger, her hands more calloused, her skin tanned despite her best efforts with bonnets and long sleeves. She learned which plants in the garden needed more water, how to tell when the bread dough had risen enough, how to pluck and clean a chicken. Ruby was an excellent teacher, patient and encouraging, and Delilah found herself flourishing under her guidance. She also found herself increasingly aware of Nathan. He was respectful and proper, never overstepping boundaries, but there was an easiness between them that grew more comfortable with each passing day. She noticed the way he smiled when he saw her in the mornings, the way his eyes followed her when she moved around the room, the way he always seemed to find excuses to talk to her or seek her opinion on various matters. One evening about 3 weeks after her arrival, Delilah was in the garden picking tomatoes as the sun began to set. The heat of the day was finally breaking, and the air smelled sweet and clean. She heard footsteps and looked up to find Nathan approaching, his hat in his hands. "Need any help?" he asked. "I am nearly finished," Delilah said, "but you are welcome to keep me company." Nathan crouched down beside her and began picking tomatoes into her basket. They worked in companionable silence for a few minutes, and Delilah found herself very conscious of his presence, of how close he was, of the way the evening light caught in his hair. "You have settled in well," Nathan said. "Ruby says you are a natural at all of this." "I enjoy it," Delilah admitted. "More than I ever enjoyed factory work, that is certain. It feels good to see the results of my labor, to watch things grow, and everyone has been so welcoming." "We are lucky to have you," Nathan said quietly. He glanced at her, then away. "I am lucky to have you here." Something in his tone made Delilah's heart beat faster. She set down the tomato she was holding and turned to face him. "Nathan." He met her eyes, and she saw something in his expression that took her breath away. It was longing and tenderness and hope all mixed together. "Delilah, I know it has not been very long, and I know this is probably not proper, but I need to be honest with you. I have come to care for you a great deal. More than I should, probably. I think about you all the time. When I am out working with the cattle, I find myself hurrying through chores so I can get back to the house and see you. When we sit by the fire in the evenings, I wish everyone else would leave so I could have you to myself." Delilah's breath caught. "You do?" "I do," Nathan said. "I know you came here to marry someone else, and I know you probably need time to heal from that disappointment. But I wanted you to know how I feel. I wanted to be honest because I think you deserve honesty, especially after how you were treated." Delilah felt tears prick her eyes, but they were not tears of sadness. "I care for you too," she said softly. "I have tried not to because it seemed too soon and too complicated, but I cannot help it. You are kind and good and honorable. You make me laugh. You make me feel safe. When I am with you, I feel like myself in a way I never have before." Nathan reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and took her hand in his. His palm was warm and rough with calluses, his grip gentle. "I do not want to rush you into anything," he said. "We can take this as slow as you need, but I want you to know my intentions are serious. I am not looking for a hired hand or a casual flirtation. I am looking for a partner, a wife, someone to build a life with." "I want that too," Delilah whispered. "With you." Nathan smiled, and it was like the sun coming out from behind clouds. He brought her hand to his lips and kissed it gently, a gesture so tender and romantic that Delilah felt her heart might burst. "Then we will court properly," he said. "I will do this right. You will have no doubts about my commitment or my feelings." Over the following weeks, Nathan proved true to his word. He courted Delilah with a combination of old-fashioned respect and genuine affection that swept her off her feet. He brought her wildflowers from the meadows, spent his evenings teaching her to ride so they could explore the ranch together, shared his dreams and fears, and listened to hers in return. He never pushed for more physical affection than holding hands or a chaste kiss on the cheek, always letting her set the pace. Ruby and Hank watched the romance develop with obvious delight, giving the couple privacy when they could while still maintaining propriety. Ruby confided in Delilah that she had never seen Nathan so happy, that he smiled more in these past weeks than he had in all the years she had known him. "He is a good man," Ruby said one morning as she and Delilah kneaded bread dough together. "He has been alone too long, pouring all his energy into this ranch. He deserves someone to share his life with, someone who appreciates what he has built here." "I do appreciate it," Delilah said. "And I appreciate him. Ruby, I think I am falling in love with him." Ruby's face broke into a delighted grin. "I think you are already there, dear, and so is he. I have never seen two people more perfectly suited for each other." That evening, Nathan asked Delilah to take a walk with him after dinner. They strolled along the creek as the sun set, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and pink. The cottonwood trees rustled in the gentle breeze, and the water burbled peacefully over rocks. "This is my favorite spot on the whole ranch," Nathan said. "I come here when I need to think or when I need to remember why I work so hard." "It is beautiful," Delilah agreed. Nathan stopped walking and turned to face her, taking both her hands in his. "Delilah, I know we have only known each other for 2 months. I know that is not very long by traditional standards, but I am 30 years old, and I know my own mind. I know what I want, and what I want is to spend the rest of my life with you." Delilah's heart was pounding so hard she was sure he must be able to hear it. "Nathan." "Let me finish," he said with a gentle smile. "You are the most remarkable woman I have ever met. You are brave and strong and kind. You make me laugh. You challenge me to be better. When I think about my future now, I cannot imagine it without you in it. Delilah Crawford, will you marry me? Will you be my wife, my partner, the mother of my children if we are blessed with them? Will you help me build this ranch into something even greater than it is? Will you grow old with me?" Delilah felt tears streaming down her face, but she was smiling so broadly her cheeks hurt. "Yes," she said. "Yes to all of it. I love you, Nathan. I love you so much." Nathan let out a whoop of joy that startled a nearby bird into flight. He swept Delilah up in his arms and spun her around, both of them laughing. When he set her down, he cupped her face in his hands and looked at her with such love and tenderness that she felt it like a physical warmth spreading through her chest. "May I kiss you?" he asked softly. "Really kiss you, please," Delilah breathed. Nathan lowered his lips to hers in a kiss that was gentle at first, then deepened with passion and promise. Delilah melted into him, her arms wrapping around his neck, feeling like she was exactly where she was meant to be. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathless and grinning. "I cannot wait to marry you," Nathan said. "How soon can we do it?" "Tomorrow," Delilah laughed. "We need to do it properly. Announce the engagement, plan a small ceremony. I want Ruby to be there and Hank, and we should invite some of the townspeople. I want everyone to know that I am choosing you, that this is my decision and my joy." "Whatever you want," Nathan said. "As long as the end result is you becoming Mrs. Nathan Keller, I am happy." They walked back to the house hand in hand, and when they announced their engagement, Ruby let out a squeal of delight and hugged them both. Hank shook Nathan's hand with a wide grin and kissed Delilah's cheek, welcoming her to the family. "I knew it from the first day," Ruby declared. "I told Hank that very night that you two were meant for each other. Did I not say that, Hank?" "You did indeed," Hank confirmed with a chuckle. "Ruby has a sense about these things." They spent the evening celebrating with a special dinner Ruby had been saving supplies for, knowing this day would come. The atmosphere was festive and warm, filled with laughter and happiness. Delilah felt a joy so profound it was almost painful, the joy of finding home and family and love all at once after a lifetime of loneliness. Over the next few weeks, preparations for the wedding moved forward. They decided to hold the ceremony at the ranch, with the circuit preacher who came through Beaver once a month. Delilah sewed herself a new dress, cream-colored with lace at the collar and cuffs, working on it in the evenings by lamplight. Ruby helped her plan a simple reception with food and dancing, and Nathan invited everyone in the area who had shown them kindness. The night before the wedding, Delilah lay in her bed unable to sleep from excitement. Tomorrow, she would become Nathan's wife. Tomorrow, she would formally join the family that had already claimed her heart. She thought about the strange path that had led her here, how her abandonment at the train station had been the beginning of something beautiful rather than the disaster it had seemed at first. She thought about Howard Billings only briefly, wondering if he was happy with Sally Porter, and decided she did not care. That man had done her the greatest favor of her life by not showing up that day. If he had met her as planned, she would have married him out of desperation and practicality, and she would never have known the kind of love she had found with Nathan. The wedding day dawned clear and beautiful, the early October air crisp and cool. Ruby helped Delilah dress and fixed her hair, pinning it up with wildflowers Nathan had gathered the day before. When Delilah looked at herself in the small mirror, she barely recognized the woman looking back. She glowed with happiness, her eyes bright, her cheeks flushed. "You look absolutely beautiful," Ruby said, tears in her eyes. "Nathan is going to lose his mind when he sees you." The ceremony was held outside near the creek, with chairs set up for the small gathering of guests. Nathan stood waiting with the preacher, and Delilah's breath caught when she saw him. He wore his best suit, his hair neatly combed, and the look on his face when he saw her walking toward him made her knees weak. It was a look of awe and love and barely contained emotion. Hank walked her down the short aisle, giving her arm a reassuring squeeze before placing her hand in Nathan's. The preacher began the ceremony, but Delilah barely heard the words. She was too focused on Nathan, on the way he looked at her like she was the most precious thing in the world, on the way his hand trembled slightly as it held hers. When it came time for the vows, Nathan spoke in a clear, strong voice. "I, Nathan Keller, take you, Delilah Crawford, to be my lawfully wedded wife. I promise to love you, honor you, and cherish you all the days of my life. I promise to be faithful and true, to work hard for our future, and to always make you laugh. You are my heart, my home, and my greatest blessing." Delilah felt tears streaming down her face as she spoke her own vows. "I, Delilah Crawford, take you, Nathan Keller, to be my lawfully wedded husband. I promise to love you, honor you, and stand by your side through whatever life brings. I promise to be your partner in all things, to build our home and family with you, and to remind you every day how grateful I am that you waited with me that day at the station. You saved me, and I will spend the rest of my life showing you what that means to me." Nathan's eyes were suspiciously bright as the preacher pronounced them husband and wife. "You may kiss your bride," the preacher said with a smile. Nathan pulled Delilah into his arms and kissed her deeply, to the cheers and applause of their guests. When they finally broke apart, both were laughing through tears of joy. The reception was simple but perfect. Ruby had outdone herself with the food, and there was music provided by a neighbor who played the fiddle. Nathan and Delilah danced together as husband and wife for the first time, swaying under the open sky as the sun began to set. "Happy," Nathan murmured in her ear. "Happier than I ever imagined possible," Delilah replied. "Thank you for waiting with me that day. Thank you for seeing me when I felt invisible." "I will always see you," Nathan promised. "And I will always wait with you, no matter what comes." As the evening wore on and their guests eventually departed, Nathan and Delilah found themselves alone for the first time as husband and wife. Nathan had moved his things into the main bedroom, the room he had been saving for exactly this purpose, and it was there that he carried her over the threshold, both of them laughing at the traditional gesture. That night, they came together with tenderness and passion, learning each other, claiming each other, becoming truly one. Delilah had never felt so cherished, so desired, so completely loved. Nathan was gentle and patient, making sure her first time was as beautiful as he could make it, and when they finally lay tangled together in the darkness, both were overcome with emotion at the intimacy they had shared. "I love you," Nathan whispered, his fingers trailing through her hair. "I will never stop loving you." "I love you too," Delilah replied. "Thank you for giving me a home, a family, a purpose. Thank you for loving me." "Thank you for saying yes," Nathan said. "Thank you for taking a chance on a lonely rancher and his crazy dream." "It is not crazy," Delilah said. "It is beautiful, and it is ours now." The months that followed were some of the happiest of Delilah's life. She and Nathan settled into married life with ease, finding their rhythm as partners. They worked side by side during the day and fell into each other's arms at night, never tiring of discovering new depths to their love. Ruby and Hank built a new cabin for themselves, giving the couple privacy in the main house while remaining close enough to help with the ranch work. That first winter was harsh, with heavy snows that blanketed the valley and temperatures that dropped well below freezing. But the house was warm and cozy, and Delilah learned to appreciate the beauty of the winter landscape. She and Nathan spent long evenings by the fire, talking and reading and planning for the spring. They spoke of their dreams for the future, of expanding the ranch, of the children they hoped to have. In late February, Delilah realized she was pregnant. She had suspected for a few weeks, but waited until she was certain before telling Nathan. She planned a special dinner and waited until they were alone afterwards to share the news. "Nathan, I have something to tell you," she said, taking his hands in hers. He looked at her with immediate concern. "What is it? Are you all right?" "I am wonderful," Delilah said, unable to keep the smile from her face. "We are going to have a baby." Nathan's face went through a series of expressions: shock, disbelief, and then pure, radiant joy. "A baby, we are going to have a baby." "In late September, I think," Delilah confirmed. Nathan let out a shout of happiness and pulled her into a careful embrace as if she might break. "This is the best news I have ever received in my life," he said, his voice choked with emotion. Thank you for this gift. Thank you for being the kind of man I want to raise children with," Delilah replied. They told Ruby and Hank the next day, and Ruby immediately went into protective mode, insisting Delilah take it easier and avoid heavy lifting. Nathan was even worse, suddenly treating his wife like she was made of glass. Delilah had to gently remind both of them that pregnancy was natural, and she was perfectly capable of continuing most of her normal activities. The spring came with the promise of new life everywhere. The cattle gave birth to healthy calves. The garden began to flourish under Delilah's care, and her belly grew round with their child. Nathan was attentive and loving, rubbing her feet when they swelled, reading to her in the evenings and talking to her belly about all the things he would teach their son or daughter. "I hope they have your eyes," Nathan said one evening, his hand resting on her abdomen, "and your kind heart." "I hope they have your strength," Delilah replied, "and your sense of humor, and your ability to see the best in people." "They will be perfect no matter what," Nathan declared, "because they will be ours." One morning in late May, almost a year after Delilah had first arrived at the train station in Beaver, she was working in the garden when she heard a wagon approaching. She looked up to see a familiar face, one she had not expected to ever see again. Howard Billings sat on the wagon bench, alone, looking older and haggard than the mental image she had formed from his letters. Nathan emerged from the barn, his expression immediately hardening when he saw who had arrived. He strode over to stand beside Delilah, his body language protective. "Billings," Nathan said coldly. "What do you want?" Howard Billings climbed down from the wagon, hat in hand. Up close, Delilah could see that he was indeed much older than she had realized from his letters, probably in his 50s, with a mean set to his mouth and calculating eyes. "I heard Mrs. Crawford was working here," he said. "I came to apologize for not meeting her at the station last year." "It is Mrs. Keller now," Nathan said firmly, "and your apology is about a year too late and entirely unwelcome." Delilah placed a restraining hand on Nathan's arm. "It is all right," she said quietly. Then to Billings, "Why are you really here, Mr. Billings?" Billings shifted uncomfortably. "Sally left me," he admitted. "Took off with a traveling salesman about a month ago, left me with debts and a mess to clean up. I realized I made a mistake in not meeting you that day. I was hoping maybe we could start over, that you might still be willing to consider marrying me." The sheer audacity of the request left Delilah momentarily speechless. Then she felt a bubble of laughter rising in her chest. She began to laugh, a genuine, joyful sound that seemed to confuse Billings. "Mr. Billings," she said when she could speak again, "I thank you from the bottom of my heart for not meeting me at that station. Your abandonment was the best thing that ever happened to me. It led me to my husband, to this ranch, to a life filled with more love and happiness than I ever dreamed possible. As you can see, I am expecting our first child. I have everything I could ever want. Your apology is not accepted because I do not need it. Your offer is declined because I would not trade my life now for anything in the world." Nathan put his arm around her shoulders, his pride in her evident. "I think you heard the lady. You should leave now." Billings's face flushed with anger and embarrassment. "You think you are better than me." He spat. "You are just a hired girl who got lucky." "No," Delilah said calmly. "I am a wife, a partner, and soon to be a mother. I am loved and valued and respected. That is not luck, Mr. Billings. That is what happens when you are with a good man instead of a selfish, cruel one. I genuinely hope you learn from your mistakes, but I suspect you will not. Either way, it is no longer my concern. Goodbye." She turned and walked back toward the house, her head held high. Nathan lingered just long enough to add, "If you ever set foot on my property again, you will regret it." Then he followed his wife, leaving Billings standing alone in the yard. Inside, Delilah found she was shaking slightly from the confrontation. Nathan pulled her into his arms and held her close. "You were magnificent," he murmured. "The way you handled him with such grace and strength. I am so proud of you." "He does not deserve my anger," Delilah said. "He is a sad, small man who will probably always be alone because he does not know how to value what he has. I feel sorry for Sally Porter wherever she is. I hope she finds something better." "She could not find anything better than what you have," Nathan said, kissing her forehead. "No one could." The summer passed peacefully, with no further interruptions. Delilah's pregnancy progressed smoothly, and by late September, she was enormous and uncomfortable but excited to finally meet their child. Ruby had assisted with births before and promised to help when the time came, and a midwife from Beaver had agreed to attend as well. Delilah went into labor on a cool September evening, just as the first hints of autumn color were beginning to touch the cottonwood leaves. The labor was long and difficult, lasting through the night and into the next day. Nathan paced outside the bedroom, worn out from Delilah's grip on his hand and from his own worry and helplessness. Ruby and the midwife worked with calm efficiency, encouraging Delilah through each contraction. Finally, as the sun reached its zenith, a baby's cry filled the house. Nathan burst through the door to find Delilah exhausted but radiant, holding a small bundle wrapped in a clean blanket. "It is a boy," the the midwife announced with a smile. A healthy, strong boy. Nathan approached the bed with something like reverence. Delilah smiled up at him, tears streaming down her face. Come meet your son. Nathan sat carefully on the edge of the bed and looked down at the tiny face, red and wrinkled and absolutely perfect. The baby had stopped crying and was blinking up at them with unfocused eyes. Nathan reached out with one finger to stroke the impossibly soft cheek, and his son's tiny hand immediately grasped it. "Hello, little one," Nathan whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "I am your papa. I have been waiting to meet you." "What should we name him?" Delilah asked. They had discussed names throughout the pregnancy but had never quite settled on one. Now, looking at their son, Nathan said, "I always liked the name James. James Edward after both our fathers. What do you think?" "James Edward Keller," Delilah said softly. "It is perfect." Ruby and Hank came in to meet the newest member of their family, and Hank's eyes grew suspiciously bright when he held the tiny infant. "He is beautiful," Ruby cooed. "Look at all that dark hair. He is going to be a heartbreaker." "He is going to be a good man," Nathan said firmly. "Like his grandfather. Like Hank. We will teach him right." As their friends left to give them privacy, Nathan lay down carefully on the bed beside Delilah, the baby cradled between them. The three of them formed their own small world, complete and perfect. 2 years ago, I was alone and desperate in New York, Delilah said softly. I never imagined I could have this. A husband who loves me, a child, a home. It feels like a dream. "It is real," Nathan assured her, "and it is only the beginning. We are going to have a beautiful life together, the three of us. 4 if we are blessed with more children. 10 if we are extremely blessed." Delilah laughed softly. "Let me recover from this one first before we start planning 10 more. "Fair enough," Nathan conceded. "But I am just saying, I would happily have a dozen children with you if that is what happened. As long as you are by my side, I can handle anything." The years that followed proved the truth of Nathan's words. Their family grew, with James gaining a little sister named Emma 2 years later, and then another brother named Thomas after that. The ranch prospered under their joint management, growing in size and reputation. They added onto the house to accommodate their growing family, building bedrooms and a larger kitchen, and a study where Nathan could manage the business side of the ranch. Delilah proved to have a natural head for numbers, and began keeping the ranch accounts, discovering she had a talent for business that had been wasted in the factory. She corresponded with buyers and tracked market trends, helping Nathan make strategic decisions about when to sell cattle and when to hold. Her contributions were invaluable, and Nathan never failed to acknowledge her as his full partner in the enterprise. Ruby and Hank remained close, becoming beloved aunt and uncle to the children. Ruby taught Delilah everything she knew about preserving food, managing a household, and raising children with both discipline and love. Hank taught the children to ride and care for the animals, passing on his lifetime of ranching knowledge with patience and humor. On quiet evenings, when the children were asleep and the house was peaceful, Delilah and Nathan would sit together on the porch they had added to the front of the house, watching the sun set over the mountains. Nathan would hold her hand, his thumb rubbing absently over her knuckles, and they would talk about their day, their children, their dreams for the future. "You ever think about that day at the train station?" Nathan asked her once, many years after that fateful afternoon. "Sometimes," Delilah admitted. "Not often, but sometimes. Usually when I am feeling particularly grateful for everything we have built together." "I think about it all the time," Nathan confessed. "I think about what might have happened if I had not stopped to talk to you that day. If I had just kept walking and left you there alone, I would have missed out on the greatest joy of my life." We would have both missed out, Delilah said. I truly believe we were meant to find each other, Nathan. Every terrible thing that happened to me before that day, all the loneliness and hardship, it was all leading me to you, to this life. I love you, Nathan said simply. After all these years, I love you more every single day. And I love you, Delilah replied. Thank you for waiting with me. Their children grew strong and healthy, learning the rhythms of ranch life from an early age. James inherited his father's work ethic and his mother's head for business. Emma was artistic and gentle, with a gift for nurturing both plants and animals. Thomas was adventurous and curious, always exploring and asking questions. Delilah made sure all three children learned to read and write well, teaching them herself when they were young, and then bringing in a teacher from Beaver as they grew older. She was determined that her children would have opportunities and choices, that they would never feel trapped or desperate the way she had been. Nathan proved to be a wonderful father, patient and playful but firm when needed. He taught his children the value of hard work and honesty, but also the importance of kindness and compassion. He never raised his hand to them in anger, remembering his own father's harshness and determined to break that cycle. One spring, when James was 12, he asked his parents how they had met. They were sitting around the dinner table, all five of them plus Ruby and Hank, who still joined them for Sunday dinners, and the question caught them both off guard. Delilah and Nathan exchanged a glance, and then Delilah smiled. Well, it is quite a story. I came to Utah to marry a man I had never met, but he did not show up to meet me at the train station. I was waiting there, alone and frightened, when your father walked by. And I could not just leave her there, Nathan continued. So I tipped my hat and said I would wait with her. What happened to the other man? Emma asked, her eyes wide. He had made other arrangements, Delilah said diplomatically. And thank goodness he did, because otherwise I would never have met your father. Everything worked out exactly as it was supposed to. That is so romantic, Emma sighed. It is practical, James said with a 12-year-old's disdain for sentiment. Papa saw an opportunity to help someone and took it. It was both romantic and practical, Nathan said with a wink at Delilah. The best things in life usually are. As the children grew into young adults, the ranch continued to thrive. Nathan and Delilah's reputation for fair dealing and quality cattle spread throughout the territory, and they became respected members of the community. When Utah achieved statehood in 1896, they celebrated with the entire town, feeling pride in being part of this new state's history. James eventually took over more and more of the daily ranch operations, showing the same dedication to the land that his father had. Emma married a teacher from Salt Lake City and moved there, but visited often with her own growing family. Thomas surprised everyone by developing an interest in law and eventually becoming an attorney, though he kept a small cabin on the ranch property and returned whenever he could. Ruby passed away peacefully in her sleep when she was in her 70s, with Hank following her less than a year later. The loss hit the whole family hard, but there was comfort in knowing they had lived long, happy lives surrounded by people who loved them. Delilah and Nathan made sure they were buried side by side in the small cemetery on the ranch, with headstones that read, "Beloved friends and family." On their 25th wedding anniversary, Nathan took Delilah back to Beaver, to the train station where they had first met. The station had been updated over the years, with a new building and a proper covered platform, but the bones of it were the same. "This is where you were sitting," Nathan said, pointing to where the bench had been. "Right here, looking so brave and trying so hard not to cry. I thought you were the most beautiful thing I had ever seen." "I was terrified," Delilah admitted. "I thought my life was over. I thought I would end up destitute and alone, And then you appeared like something out of a dream and changed everything. Best decision I ever made, Nathan said. Walking up to you that day, offering to wait with you, asking you to stay, marrying you, loving you. Every single day with you has been a gift, Delilah. I hope you know that. Delilah felt tears sliding down her face. She was 50 years old now, with silver threading through her auburn hair and lines around her eyes from years of smiling. Nathan was 55, his dark hair almost completely gray, his body still strong but moving with the careful stiffness of age. But when she looked at him, she still saw the man who had tipped his hat and promised to wait with her all those years ago. "I know," she said. "And you have been my greatest gift. You gave me a home when I had none, a family when I was alone, love when I had never known it. You saw me when I felt invisible, Nathan. You gave me a reason to believe in goodness again." They stood together on the platform, holding hands as trains came and went, watching other people's stories begin and end, grateful beyond measure for their own story and the beautiful life they had built together. Years continued to pass. Nathan and Delilah grew old together with grace, their love deepening rather than fading with time. They became grandparents and then great-grandparents, their home always filled with family during holidays and celebrations. The ranch remained in the family, passed down to James and eventually to his children, the Keller name becoming synonymous with integrity and quality throughout Utah. Nathan and Delilah marked their 50th wedding anniversary surrounded by 3 generations of family. The celebration was held at the ranch, with tables set up under the cottonwood trees by the creek where Nathan had proposed so many years before. There was music and dancing and more food than anyone could eat, and the joy in the air was almost tangible. During a quiet moment, when they had snuck away from the party for a few minutes alone, Nathan pulled Delilah into his arms for a slow dance with no music, but the sound of the creek and the rustle of leaves. 50 years, he murmured. It seems like forever and like no time at all. I would do it all again, Delilah said. Every single moment, even the hard parts because they were with you. We have had a good life, Haven, not we, Nathan said. It was not really a question. The very best life, Delilah confirmed. Better than I ever dreamed possible that day at the station. You kept your promise, Nathan. You waited with me. You are still waiting with me. Always, Nathan said. In this life and whatever comes after, I will always wait with you. They swayed together in the dappled sunlight, 2 people who had found each other against all odds and had built something beautiful from that chance encounter. A family, a legacy, a love story that would be told and retold by their descendants for generations to come. Nathan passed away in his sleep at the age of 82, with Delilah holding his hand. His death was peaceful, and in his final days, he made sure to tell everyone he loved them and to thank Delilah one last time for saying yes all those years ago. She held him as he took his last breath, and though her heart was shattered, there was also a deep sense of gratitude for the 57 years they had shared. Delilah lived another 3 years without him, supported by her children and grandchildren who made sure she was never alone. She spent her days in the house they had built together, tending a small garden and telling stories about Nathan to anyone who would listen. She spoke of his kindness, his humor, his unwavering love. She made sure everyone knew that he had been the best man she had ever known. On a warm September afternoon, very much like the day her first child had been born, Delilah passed away peacefully in her sleep. Her family found her in the chair by the window overlooking the valley, a smile on her face, her hands folded peacefully in her lap. On the table beside her was an old letter, yellowed with age, from Howard Billings proposing marriage. But next to it was something else, a wildflower, fresh and perfect, as if someone had just picked it that morning. None of the family could explain the flower, as Delilah had been too frail to walk to the meadows herself. But Emma, now a grandmother herself, smiled through her tears and said, "Papa came for her. He came to take her home." They buried Delilah beside Nathan on the ranch, under the cottonwood trees near the creek. The headstone was simple but perfect. Nathan Keller, beloved husband, father, and friend, and Delilah Keller, beloved wife, mother, and friend. And underneath both names, a single inscription: "He waited with her, and they waited for each other, together forever." The ranch continued on, generation after generation, the Keller family never forgetting the story of how it all began. The tale of the mail-order bride left standing at the station, and the cowboy who tipped his hat and said he would wait with her became family legend, told and retold at gatherings and celebrations. It was a reminder that sometimes the worst moments of our lives are actually doorways to something better. That kindness matters. That love can be found in the most unexpected places. And every year, on the anniversary of that fateful day in August 1882, someone from the family would place wildflowers on Nathan and Delilah's graves, a tribute to a love story that had started with abandonment and ended with a legacy that would last forever. The flowers were always the same kind that grew on the hillside Nathan had pointed out to Delilah on their first ride to the ranch together, the ones that turned the whole slope purple in the spring. They were resilient flowers, able to grow in harsh conditions, beautiful despite the challenging environment. Just like the love between a lonely cowboy and a stranded mail-order bride, a love that had bloomed in the desert and thrived against all odds. Their story was one of hope and second chances, of seeing the best in people and choosing kindness even when it would be easier to walk away. It was a reminder that sometimes a single decision to help a stranger, to tip your hat and offer to wait, can change the entire course of multiple lives. Nathan and Delilah's descendants grew up knowing that they came from love, that their family was built on a foundation of respect and partnership and deep, abiding affection. The ranch that Nathan had carved out of the Utah wilderness remained in the family for over a century, a testament to his hard work and vision. But more than that, it was a testament to what he and Delilah had built together. The values they instilled in their children and grandchildren, the importance of integrity and compassion and standing by your commitments, echoed through the generations. On the old train platform in Beaver, which eventually became a historical site as the railroad changed and modernized, a small plaque was placed telling the story of Nathan and Delilah Keller. It became a popular spot for proposals, with couples seeing it as a symbol of true love and fate. The plaque read, "On this spot in August 1882, Delilah Crawford waited for a groom who never came. Nathan Keller saw her waiting alone and offered his company." That simple act of kindness began a love story that spanned 5 decades and created a legacy that endures to this day. May we all have the courage to help those in need, and the wisdom to recognize love when it appears unexpectedly. The ranch house that Nathan built, and that he and Delilah expanded together, still stood strong, preserved by the family as a reminder of where they came from. The creek still ran through the property, the cottonwood trees grown massive and ancient now, their roots deep in the land. The barn had been rebuilt twice, but each time it was painted the same red with white trim that Nathan had chosen all those years ago. In the main house, in a place of honor in what had been Nathan and Delilah's bedroom, there hung 2 items: Nathan's hat, the one he had tipped that first day, and Delilah's carpet bag, the one she had clutched so tightly as she waited on the platform. They were fragile now, preserved carefully, but they served as tangible reminders of the beginning of everything. Sometimes, late at night, family members swore they could hear soft laughter echoing through the house, or the sound of two voices talking quietly on the porch. But rather than being frightening, it was comforting. It was Nathan and Delilah, still together, still watching over the family they had created. The love story that began with abandonment and was saved by kindness became more than just a family history. It became a lesson passed down through generations about the power of compassion, the importance of second chances, and the truth that our greatest blessings often come disguised as our worst moments. Delilah's journey from the factories of New York to the train platform in Utah to the ranch that became her home was a journey from despair to joy, from loneliness to belonging, from a life of mere survival to a life filled with love and purpose. Nathan's decision to stop to tip his hat, to offer his time and company to a stranger, was a decision that rippled forward through time, affecting hundreds of lives across multiple generations. His kindness created a family. His love created a legacy. His simple words, "I will wait with you," became a promise that extended far beyond that single afternoon, becoming a promise to build a life together, to stand by each other through all circumstances, to wait for each other even unto death and beyond. And so the story of Nathan and Delilah Keller lived on, a reminder that love can bloom in the unlikeliest places, that kindness is never wasted, that sometimes being stood up at a train station is not an ending but a beginning. It was a story of the American West, of hard work and harsh conditions and people who carved out lives in difficult circumstances. But more than that, it was a love story, pure and simple and true. Their descendants carried pieces of them forward. James's great-great-granddaughter had Delilah's auburn hair and head for business. Emma's great-great-grandson had Nathan's gray-green eyes and his gentle humor. Thomas's great-great-great-granddaughter had the same compassionate heart that had led Nathan to stop for a stranger on a train platform. The Keller Ranch continued to thrive, adapting to modern times but never forgetting its roots. Where cattle once grazed, there were now also crops and solar panels, but the land was still worked with respect and care. The family that tended it still gathered under the cottonwood trees for celebrations, still told the story of how it all began, still believed in the power of kindness and the possibility of love. And if you go to Beaver, Utah, and visit the old train station that is now a historical site, you might feel something special on that platform. A sense of hope, perhaps. A feeling that good things can come from bad situations. A belief that one person's kindness can change everything. You might imagine a young woman in a gray dress with pearl buttons, sitting on a bench with her carpetbag, trying not to cry. You might see a tall man with a wide-brimmed hat approaching, his expression kind, his intentions pure. You might hear, carried on the desert wind, a few simple words that changed two lives and created a legacy that would endure for generations. "I will wait with you." And in those words, you might hear an echo of all the best things that humanity is capable of. Compassion for strangers, loyalty to loved ones, the courage to take chances, the wisdom to recognize blessings when they appear in unexpected forms, and above all, love. The kind of love that waits patiently. The kind of love that sees beyond circumstances to the person underneath. The kind of love that builds homes and families and legacies that last far beyond a single lifetime. That was the gift Nathan gave Delilah that August day in 1882. Not just his time or his company, but a glimpse of the kind of love she deserved. And she gave him the same gift in return. The chance to share his life with a partner who saw him, valued him, and loved him completely. Together, they created something beautiful out of what should have been a disaster. They turned abandonment into opportunity, loneliness into love, and despair into hope. Their story was complete, their circle closed, their legacy assured. Nathan and Delilah Keller lived, loved, worked, raised a family, grew old together, and passed into memory with the satisfaction of knowing they had made the absolute most of the gift they had been given. That gift was each other, found in the most unlikely way imaginable, but held on to fiercely until death and beyond. And so we leave them there, together forever under the cottonwood trees, the sound of the creek providing eternal music, the Utah sun warming the earth above them, their family continuing on with the values and love they had instilled. Their story was finished, but its effects would ripple forward through time immemorial, a testament to the truth that sometimes the best things in life come not from careful planning but from chance encounters, acts of kindness, and the willingness to wait with someone who needs you, even when you are a stranger, even when you gain nothing obvious from it, simply because it is the right thing to do. That was Nathan's way. That was Delilah's way. And it became the Keller way, passed down from parent to child across the generations, a family built on the foundation of one cowboy who tipped his hat and said 5 simple words that changed everything. I will wait with you.